So you've done your first draft. How long did draft one of the third book take?
Draft one of the third book. Yeah, that went really, really quickly. I actually, the first, so book one took me forever. It was due, it was due, and I mean, it went on another 2 years after it was due because I just couldn't, there was more than any other book I've worked on. I think I was really blocked on book one. And I think that's because I was trying to write about something really abstract, which was how Rosie could use stories to fight witches. I knew that I wanted to, that was one of the kind of motivating forces of writing the book in the first place, was that I have this habit of, when I read a news story that really bums me out, I often just kind of automatically lie in bed and try to rewrite the story, like rewrite the real story into kind of a happy ending. I do that almost like a reflex, and it helps to soothe me and kind of put my mind at ease a little bit so I can sleep. But also when I was kind of coming up with this idea for 13 Witches, I just also started thinking about how I do have this kind of, as we were, talking about magic earlier, I just do have some kind of belief I can't explain that even when we're only telling stories to ourselves, they change something in the world. I just have that faith. And so I wanted to write about that. And so I really struggled with how to write like a mystery and sort of an adventure story that revolves on the idea of a story fighting dark things and evil things, not dark things, evil things. And so eventually I ended up just kind of Googling, like, how do I do this? How do I do this? Looking at all these different writers talking about how they're working with weapons in their stories. And finally, I just kind of gathered enough information of when you're working with a weapon in a story, it should sort of reflect its carrier, its owner, and it should have weaknesses as well as strengths. And so I came up with this idea that Rosie, through writing a story about a bluebird, and this story that's kind of meaningful for her about how this bluebird lives in a world of kind of scary things, and sometimes bad things happen to good bluebirds. She writes this story, and kind of there's this, she kind of wraps it around this flashlight that she has. It's her favorite flashlight. And through kind of these magical forces that are kind of surrounding her, this bluebird ends up being the thing that comes out of the flashlight. And so her story has created this physical element that helps her kind of find witches, fight witches. And over time, it turns out that this bluebird can transform as far as Rosie's kind of imagination can go. And so it was sort of taking something abstract and making it concrete. That was like my big hurdle in these stories. But that, when I finally reached that, that felt truthful to me. And so then it sort of took off, but it was awful. And I was weeping, I was crying, and my husband works at home with me. Yeah, not with me, he works his own job at home. And I would just go to his office crying just about how this story was never going to happen. And all I want to do is write about how much I love books. And but eventually, eventually it came together. And the second book and the third book have come so much easier. So I know, again, that's a long answer, but.
No, it's a fantastic answer. So I know you're more of a pantser than a plotter, right? So do you know you're going to have a trilogy when you start?
For this book, I didn't. For this book, for the 13 Witches, I thought it was going to be 2 books. And then when I was I think I was had finished the first book and I realized it needed to be 3. It's almost like I just picture what I would like to hold in my hands at the end. I have this something we used to do at the production company I worked at was, I think our boss used to put like, he would just take construction paper and kind of wrap it around a book so that it was like a blank. I actually have here, hold on, I'll grab it. I'll kind of take a book and wrap construction paper over it so that it's kind of blank like this. And I just keep it somewhere so that I can just think of it as a finished book. And it helps me think, well, what is the book that I would like to hold in my hands? Like, and which really is helping me try to think, what is the book that a reader would want to hold in their hands? Like, I remember that feeling as a kid, especially, or I mean, even now as an adult, like certain books, you just love to hold them, and so I think when I'm trying to decide about like trilogy or single book, I a lot of times it is kind of like a little bit of the physical idea of like, what do I want to be holding at the end of this?
So then once you've got book 1 published, then do you take 2 other books, wrap them in construction paper and put them next to it so it's like its own little box set for one day?
Oh, that's a really good idea. No, I've never done that.
Oh,
But,
okay.
yeah, I should.